Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Yo, Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good. Sun is shining. Spring is in the air, and we're doing another show.
And we're doing another show, and I can't wait to get going because this is one I really need to learn a lot about. And we should bring in our colleague, Mike Austin from Hemmings.
Hello.
Mike, welcome back.
Good seeing you again. Good having you on the show, even though we're wherever you are, probably at home, right?
I'm at home now, yeah. I moved upstairs to have a little more heat in the winter. And now it's spring, so I can move back into my regular, non-climate controlled office.
Yeah, don't be too hasty though, since we had those 3 inches of snow on Monday.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's right. Well, hey, let's bring in our special guest today, Mazen Fawaz. He's the CEO of a company called Singer. I thought it was Singer Vehicle Design, but your lower third there, Mazen, says Singer Group Inc. What is it?
It does. That is so we've gone by Singer Vehicle Design for some time, but we're sort of expanding our outlook over the next few years. So it's not just vehicle design. No.
So we'll have to get into that whole story, but let me set the stage here. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was wandering through an auto show. I think it was the Detroit Auto Show, walking around with Ralph Gilles, head of design now at Stellantis. And he said, "Oh, look at that, Singer Porsches. We got to go take a look at it." And I'm like, what the heck are Singer Porsches? And Ralph was all over this stuff. And it took me about 2 nanoseconds to realize, what the heck did these guys do to these Porsches? They're gorgeous. So you pick it up from there. Tell the audience what Singer does.
Sure. So we restore and modify old Porsches. We do it to a particular program, though. We take a 90s 911, the car they made between 1989 and 1994, and we take it completely apart down to bare metal. We remove the bodywork, and we rebody the car in composite and carbon fiber, and we rebuild the car from the ground up with all new components. Which are a combination of new Porsche parts that we modify, or engineered components that we've had designed, commissioned, to really sort of dial up the volume on the car, visually, from a performance perspective, and just general atmosphere. So the interior of the car is done at. I would say our tolerances and things are probably higher than anything made. Generally, we have a very high attention to detail and a very tight requirement on things like panel gaps and fit and finish, and just generally how the thing bolts together, how it goes down the road. There's a cost associated with it. It's pretty expensive.
So give us a ballpark. What are you talking? Ballpark figure.
So there's 2 right now. We've just launched a third, but we have 2 programs. One we refer to as the classic. It's the car you might have seen the most of, maybe the car you've seen in person. Those cars are about $850,000. There's another one which we refer to as the DLS, which was the same philosophy, except we took it to a Formula One team, and we went through the entire car nose to tail, and we reapproached every component it's still an analog car at the end of the day, but it's very lightweight, it's very strong, very fast. That car is about a $2 million car. We've just launched a third version of these kind of restorations, which is our turbo. It's a bit more than a classic. So it's a step up. There's the turbo right there.
Plus, there's
same philosophy, same car underneath as well.
So plus there's the donor car that you begin with. So there's a cost of that, right?
That's right. That's right.
And-
So we take generally quite beat up old 911s. They're 30 plus years old. They usually have a lot of miles. They're pretty rough, and then we turn it into that.
And so in terms of like either hours of labor or, start to finish, assuming that everything went in order and you weren't, waiting for something or there weren't other delays, how long does the process take? Not from when a customer wants it, but like, from when you get the car in, you start working on it.
Sure. Nose to tail, about 11 months. We have some programs in place over the next 24 months to shorten that. Just re-engineering a few things. The DLS car is actually faster. The one we did with the F1 team. It's a much more highly engineered car. That car is built. Well, here it is. This is a video of our testing, actually. So that car is built much more quickly.
So who is the Formula One team?
Williams.
Gotcha. And how many
We
cars
did
a year
that,
do you do?
2016. So right now we're doing about 7 a month. We are in the process right now. We've just moved into a 115,000 foot building. We're going to triple our output in the next 24 months.
Is this a global undertaking? I mean, not all of the people are necessarily from the United States.
So we have two facilities. One is here in Southern California in Los Angeles, and one is in Oxford in England, in sort of Motorsports Valley in England. We have about, I want to say 80 people in England, and I think 180 here. And here's where we do the higher volume, lower value car, and in England we do that car you're looking at on the screen. Oh, that one, second one.
So when you talk about the production and the value, when the Singer vehicles first started, it was kind of renowned. They're not making that many, and you have to wait a very long time, and it's not easy to get one. As the volume has increased so far, it seemingly hasn't affected demand. Where do you see that in terms of, do you have people saying, well, I used to have one of 50 and now it's one of hundreds, or is it everybody still wants one?
So demand for us is skyrocketing. I mean, it's why we've moved, and we didn't see that coming. To be honest, back when my partner Rob founded the business, I met him when he was doing the first car. We thought we'd do 5 ever. So it wasn't like we didn't see any of this coming. So, but if you think about scarcity, right? If we ever even do 1,000 cars, we're still as much as a LaFerrari, right? So it's still quite scarce. To be one of a few hundred is, I think the McLaren P1, there were 375 of them. So we're definitely in the very rare air for sure.
Well, you want to keep it that way, right? I mean, exclusivity has got to be one of the cachets of the car.
Yeah. Not hard to do at these prices, I would say, right? And we're quality for us is first. That's a limiting factor in speed, right? It's not like you're going to churn out one a week or whatever. It takes a very long. There's a lot of things done by hand. Well, the whole car is done by hand, really, but a lot of the very fine details have to be done. They can't even be automated. So, and not that we look to do it. So, yeah, we have sales out to 2026, I think, at the moment. So it's really about being efficient, getting customers' cars on time, which is, there's a lot of headwinds in manufacturing at the moment. So we're building up resource to deal with that.
All right. So let me ask you. So Mike brings his car to you today. This means that it will not come back to him until 2026 at some point?
No. So if a new customer comes in today, we won't start that person's car until say 2025. That's how we have I think 400 cars to build at the moment.
Wow.
Over 400. Yeah. And
So
that's climbing every day. Yeah.
Mazen, walk us through the process a bit. I mean, if I come in with a Porsche and I want something done, do I have a catalog I pick out of? Do I work with the designer? How do you guys even come up with the concepts of what you want to put in a car?
Yeah, I mean the program is really the same. So all the cars are quite similar. You would pick colors, trim. We have things like brake options, damper options, a couple of motor options. Mechanically, they're nearly identical. So it's about colors and but we have comfortable seats. We have racing seats. We have very elaborate options on interiors. So we have things that are like woven leather. You can order in a solid color, or you can design a pattern yourself. And it's sort of how far you want to go. In terms of color, trim, aesthetics, and so on. But mechanically, the cars are generally quite similar to each other. So it's not like someone can come in and say, I want to turn my car into a banana or something. We're not a hot rod shop really like that, right? It's generally quite highly engineered. So everything we do is quite programmatic. It's not just a bunch of guys with like torches and hammers and stuff. It used to be that for sure, because it was like we're making one-offs at the time. So.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about singer has now become both an adjective and a verb, right? People say it's a singer level of whatever for all kinds of the car world, or it's a singer like treatment to a different car restoration and or update. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I tell you. So, I mean, Rob and I are like kids in a candy store. I mean, it's all flattering. It's all really surprising all the time. It's been 12 years. It's been a while. We've never placed an advertisement ever. This has all just sort of happened through socializing and kind of some third party, journalists and things. So it's very humbling, very interesting to watch. And I mean, we're the biggest fans of what we do. Like it's very self-indulgent. Like the cars, there's nothing on these cars, no features, no design that's there to sell. It's all because we want it for ourselves. And so we get to go do it, right? It's all more expensive than what we can afford. We get to go and play with our toys, right? It's just with the coincidence is that other people like what we do. So that's the stroke of luck. We could like things that are, boring or I don't know what. There's a lot of bad music out in the world. I'm sure the people that write it love it. In our case, people like what we're doing. So we didn't plan it that way.
How did you make the decision for the bracketing of 89 to 94?
So that iteration of the 911, it's very interesting what Porsche did, right? They designed a car in the 60s, and they just iterated on the exact same car until 1999. I mean, you could swap windows from cars that are 30 or 40 years apart. They just made it better and better and better, stronger, and so on. And that for that car, the internal code at Porsche is the 964. It's like they developed an entirely new car mechanically under an identical skin, virtually identical skin from the previous car. So if you open the deck lid or the front trunk of an early 89 car or an 88 car and say a 90 car, they're totally different, completely. And so that car has anti-lock brakes, has power steering, has power windows, it has an actual HVAC system, air conditioning and heat. It's like an easy car to drive, and it was a giant leap in terms of engineering, strength of the vehicle. Not a whole lot faster, but just a better car. So we were able to take this car that was rather advanced and kind of, make it look like the earlier cars. That's really what we do. So you have this kind of classic car, but it's easy to drive. It's easy to live with. You drive it every day. As much as we love, cars from the 60s and so on, they're not always great to deal with, or to spend a lot of time in, right? Kind of challenging sometimes. So that was really the fascination with that. The next car Porsche did before they went to a water-cooled car had a much more advanced rear suspension, which, as much as it's great, it kind of took a little bit of the life out of the car as far as we're concerned. So the 964, the car we use, still has a trailing arm rear suspension, like a Ducati single-sided swing arm, and it's bolted basically to your butt. So it's a very direct. It's not. I wouldn't say it's raw like an old car, but it just hits the right tones. So we were able to take that thing, and those cars weren't really loved at the time. So they, the cars we get have a couple 100,000 miles on them. They're pretty beat up. They were driven a lot, and it wasn't like they were particularly rare. They made 40,000 of them, so it was kind of the perfect specimen for us.
Mazen, you also really developed these cars. I mean, from a performance standpoint. Tell us a little bit about doing winter testing, track testing, and all that. So, it's not just some pretty up job. You guys are really making these things go.
Yeah, we Rob one day spray painted on a wall in our building, "Everything is important." And it really is. It's about getting the whole thing right, that it's not compromised, and that it doesn't feel like a stiff old hot rod. It's a real. So we really actually engineer the car. We spend a lot of time trying to get it right. Obviously, a lot of money. This is winter testing our ABS traction control and stability control system with Bosch. So that's a 500 horsepower old 911 with stability control. So like a modern, that team from Bosch that did that are the same people who would do like a Porsche 918 or a LaFerrari, or so we spent a ton of time at racetracks going through all these details. And you can take that old car and wing it around a circuit in the wet, and you don't have to be a magician. You don't have to be Marino Franchitti, that is a racing driver driving. You can just go out and have a good time. So it's those kind of details are super important. It's not just how the car feels, but that it's reliable. It makes sense. It's a really engineered thing. As much as I think some hot rods are cool, they're just shoving a faster engine into a car, but not considering the rest of it. It throws things off balance. So the cars are, if nothing else, very balanced, and they feel very natural. They feel like they were born that way. That we didn't really. That they sort of could have happened that way. That we didn't necessarily just start, throwing heavier springs in and louder exhausts and all this stuff that are sort of looked at individually. It's really a system through the cars.
Why was the decision made to replace all the body panels and go with composite materials rather than doing an aluminum or some other material?
Yeah, it's interesting. Composite material is obviously lightweight, so that's one that's super attractive. But it's fun. It's actually much easier than metal, right? You need rather large, expensive tools. Making adjustments to the tools is very difficult. So metal would be really for stamping out, a much higher volume than we would do. So carbon and composite, that we do everything in that because of the low volume nature generally. as well as the benefit. Those cars are much lighter than they started. The classic car is nearly 500 pounds lighter.
Wow.
Than what we start with. Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah, that DLS car, the one you saw winter testing, is a 2,400 pound car.
That's unheard of these
500
days.
horsepower. Yeah.
So with that engineering and the exterior and the interior, you're essentially making, from a visual standpoint, they're all kind of one-off bespoke cars with some common mechanical engineering in it. How do you balance? Where do you draw the line between the customer wants something a certain way, both visually and mechanically? Like, how do you balance? Customer wants it a certain way versus saying this is the way we do things, and you're coming to us for a specific thing.
I wouldn't say we get a lot of requests to do things outside. We get occasional ones. The majority of them are maybe colors and trim that we haven't done. There was a picture of what looks like a black car. It's actually, I think, very dark blue. That was a very bespoke thing. But the requests to do things that would require new tools, new body work, those we don't get those too often. And then of course we just say no. Often, we've had requests to do things just outside of our expertise. We've said we don't think we do a good job, or we're very, very, very busy. So any distraction or something isn't going to work. We did entertain. Sometimes we entertain them, but at the end of the day, it just would suck a lot of time in. We also have new stuff coming. We have new stuff to develop. So. And the gestation period for these things is quite long. It took 4 years to develop that DLS car. So,
Mazen, how'd you get into this? Tell us a little bit about your co-CEO, I guess, or founder, Rob Dickinson. How did he start all this? How did you guys meet up? How'd you take it from there?
So Rob started this in I think it was 2008. Or technically 2008, and he had a vision for how he thought a 911 should look, and he took one and he did it. I mean, he did it by hand, with clay and Bondo and all that. He bodied one, and he's a designer. He's an automotive designer. He's an artist. He was a musician for 20 years.
He was in a rock band.
For 20 years. It's very cool. But prior to that, his roots were in automotive design. Obviously, his passion was there. And then when I think music, when he was done with that, he wanted to get back to what he, to this thing that he loved, and that was how he expressed his vision, and his kind of love for Porsche. And I met him when they had just done the first car. I met him in the parking lot of what he was. I'd seen a mock-up that he did. It kind of made its way around the web, and I had just moved to Los Angeles, so I went by there for fun. We ended up hitting it off. We've been very close friends ever since. But the early days was really not looked at as it wasn't looked at as a commercial endeavor at all. It was just super cool. I had moved there to California to start a tech business, which I did. And I was hanging out with Rob, helping out for the first 2 years of Singer. It's kind of a nights and weekends for fun thing. And then I went off and I started my business and just watched Singer grow, really. Rob at the helm of this thing that was like when it got to 10 orders, who knew it would get to 20? Or when it got to 50, you would never say it's going to go to 100. I kind of observed it, and then and I would come to the shows and we'd talk about it a lot. It was like having a friend with a band, a cool band, and I would go and see him play. And then in 2016, we had this idea to do this car with the Formula One team, and I said, you know what, I'll do that. I'll take on that project. So I went away and did that. But as Singer continued to grow, again, in an unexpected way. So I went off to England and developed that car. And then in 2019, we decided to kind of really focus on maturing the business and look down the road. I became the CEO in January of 2020. We closed for COVID in February. And so it's great. So it's working with a very close friend who's as lunatic as I am for what we're doing, right? And so it's fantastic. And Rob is obviously the creative. I'm pretty sure he's a genius of some sort. Like he's really is. Like I don't think that many people can write hit songs like that, right? That doesn't come around very often. So, and I get to build a business to support, his vision in that sense. And then I'm responsible for the mechanical side of the car. So what it's made of, how it goes down the road, how it sounds, who works on it, what partners and things. So I can develop a very cool car to drive that looks like something that Rob designed. I mean, it's like a fantasy. Very cool. That's great. Yeah.
Presumably you have competitors out there now. So how do you deal with that?
We don't. I think that it's cool to see other people do stuff. We're actually eager to see. I mean, when people do like singer-like things, that we think it's a little bit lame, like because it's a lot of effort to do something that's kind of just like us. If they're going to put that much time into it, they could kind of try other stuff. But to see other people, other iterations, whether they're Porsche or whatever, it's very exciting for us. It's kind of cool in terms of actual competitors commercially. I mean, we're sort of now in a different space. I mean, I think we have over 600 sales now. Mm-hmm. So I think the next one up might be in the tens. So we're, we want to. It's fun. We want to see other things. I think there was just an Austin Healey startup that just popped up. So it's cool. It's cool for us to see this stuff. We know how hard it is though. So like,
Mazen,
good luck.
Yeah. Have you ever heard from Porsche? What do they think of what you guys are doing?
Oh, yeah. We have a fantastic relationship with Porsche. So you may not have seen, but Porsche now. So we're a huge client. So we buy a lot of parts from them. So every car gets all new Porsche parts. So yeah, we have a nice relationship with them. We're big fans of theirs, and it seems like they're fans of ours. So we get visits from them here and there. And again, we spend a lot of money there. So yeah, it's good. It's very cool. And then we're like Porsche lunatics, so it's pretty easy relationship. Right?
That's great. Well,
so they continue to produce parts that will go back to the to 89, 94 on a regular basis. So you'll be able to put them into new or redone vehicles.
Yeah, I mean the Porsche Classic department is pretty serious, right? And they support cars going all the way back, right? So the 356 in the 50s, and I think that they're busy making parts, addressing areas where they don't have parts. I mean the Porsche Classic cars are. I mean, the values have skyrocketed. The sort of cult love for those things is pretty wide. It's pretty global. So it's a pretty big business that we're albeit probably the largest single customer. We're still small compared to how many Porsches are out in the world, classic Porsches as well. So yeah, they make it easy on us for sure. I mean, on occasion, we worry about things continuing to be made, but we're able to ask them. We're able to have a conversation with them now that we're kind of we keep them busy. So it's a pretty open relationship.
You know, we had one of your customers on the show about a year ago. John Oates from Hall & Oates was on the show and raved about the car. So,
is he a customer? I didn't.
Yeah,
Rob and I know like probably the first 30 customers, but after that it was just like, all right. Well, I mean, we can't know everybody, right? The first 30, 40 folks who really took a bet on us. But we hear all the time, like we'll see a car, you know, being wrenched on and hear who it's for, and we're like, really? That guy? Cool. You know, some whatever collector or head of state or something. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
So on that note, actually, you don't see singers come up for sale on auction sites or in a listing very often. I mean, partially it's due to scarcity, partially it's due to presumably people spent a lot of money and love their cars and wanted it. But I mean, do you facilitate any of if a car changes hands, does a lot of that go through the network that you have, or is it just everyone's holding onto their cars?
Well, we are at the moment. It's looking like about 60% of the people who sell one are doing it to order another one. So they'll come to us and say, I want a Targa or a different color, or I'm moving to a different country, so I need a different specification. I'd like to order another one and sell this one. Or we have folks that have gone from the classic car to the DLS car, and so they'll want to sell that. So we see some of that. I mean, it's not many. It's a tiny handful. But yeah, so we help piece that together, and we have a line kind of out the door of people who would take something now rather than wait. But you know, the journey of these cars are very highly specified by the client. They really spend a lot of time getting it right and really personalizing it. So it's not I don't know, it's not like buying a new car off the lot that you might like and then for a while and then you sell it. It's like they choose something, they spend a ton of time specifying it, they wait years, and then they finally get it. And so they generally want to hang on to it, we've seen.
Could you talk about what you guys do to the powertrain of these vehicles?
The classic car, so the original, the 964 came with a 3.6 liter 2-valve air-cooled engine that made 260 horsepower, give or take. For the classic, most of them are now we modify them to 4 liters. They still meet the other things we have to engineer. They meet emission standards, so they're legal with CARB and EPA. We don't try to squeeze a ton of power out of them like a racing car, because they generally are difficult to use. They don't last very long, so we modify them in a way that focused on drivability and quality. So the 4-liter has about 390 horsepower. That's the most common chosen engine for the classic. The DLS engine, all of those are also 4 liters, but those are 4-valve air-cooled engines. That one, and that's making 500 horsepower, and it revs to over 9,000 RPM, about 9,300 RPM.
Even the engine looks beautiful.
Yeah, well, it better.
Hey, Mazen, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to wrap up this segment of the show, but boy, I so admire what you guys are doing. The cars are beautiful. Obviously, you've attracted a hardcore customer base from all around the world. Kudos to you guys. It's brilliant what you've done.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Well, good. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back to talk about more things automotive. That's pretty cool. I've never been in one of their cars. One of these days, hopefully, I'll get a ride.
So Mike, you're more into that space. Tell us about how these cars are perceived by, collectors and others who are enthusiastic about vehicles like this.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of a special niche, right? That and they've done something. They're highly sought after, and you see them when you see them up close. You're like, wow, that's a really high standard of work. And the really odd thing is they change every single body panel, right? So the fender curve is a little different. Not just the lip for the wheel, but like the whole shape of it. But it still obviously is like unmistakably a Porsche. And it's just one of those things you get with the really detailed builders that, they can't get something out of their head. It's like, I just want this line to be a little different. But what they've done that I think is different than other custom places is they built this name. They haven't made that many cars, but any run-of-the-mill muscle car resto mod is never worth what you put into it. And these, when they do change hands, I presume they're changing hands pretty close to original price. So I think they're seen as something special, and I think it's something that's going to last and have a legacy, even more so than like a big name builder who again is like notable and also carries some cachet with it. There's a little extra with the Singer Porsches.
Yeah. And, he hit on two key things for me: air-cooled engines and the old chassis setup, which if you guys have driven Porsches, I know you have, trailing throttle oversteer. Wow. I mean, it's a real driver's car. If you're driving fast, especially in any kind of slick situation, you better know what the hell you're doing, because it's so easy in a car like those old 911s to swap ends very quickly. And the key, as you guys probably know, is if you start to slide, you put your foot into the gas, not on the brake.
Yeah, well, especially with 400 horsepower, and obviously it's got modern tires and it's upgraded. But when the 911 started, it was sporty for its era, but matched very well to the limits of the chassis. And as time went on, it got more and more powerful. I think that's how the going backwards legend grew. I think was as the power started to outrun the old chassis. So these ones obviously. Or I haven't driven one either, but they hook up more and they're probably more predictable and stable than just putting a 400 horsepower engine into any old 911. But I mean that's the appeal too, is that they've got a little ragged edge to them, more so than the newer ones.
I thought it was interesting that he said that many of the vehicles that come in have been well driven with lots of miles on them, and I just basically wonder about, okay, so somebody who has had this car for a long time. They have $800,000 they can put into that car. That just seemed odd to me in some ways.
Well, they're throwing out most of the car, right? They really just want the shell. So to me, it's like you might as well start with something that's used up if you're not going to save much of it.
That's right. You may as well try to buy the donor car as cheap as you can.
Yeah, that's fascinating business. They obviously lightning struck there. That's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay,
So,
Gary, you
I would
always
say
have
one last thing on
Yeah.
the fact that they have a waiting list for 4 more years and they sell for close to 7 figures is, to me, all of the money getting thrown into things like resto mod style, anywhere in the spectrum of resto mod and classic cars, just kind of speaks to the people that can afford this could line up for a Ford GT or could line up for a Ferrari, and they're spending their money on the older cars. It speaks a little bit to nostalgia, but I think it speaks a little bit to, as much as everybody loves massaging heated and cooled seats, they also love character. And older cars are flawed, but they have more character.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, but it sort of sounded to me like, he was saying that they make the vehicle from the interior point of view, up to date. So, I mean, maybe they have heated and cool seats.
Yeah. Air conditioning and traction control. There's a sweet spot, somewhere in between an Austin 7 and a New Veyron.
Yeah.
So speaking of cars of this nature, before we go on to things that happened this week, I thought it was interesting that in 1983, today, basically, the C4 Corvette was introduced to the public. What I found to be very, very interesting is the fact that something happened in 1996. Maybe Mike will guess this one. Someone died.
Would it be Ken Lingenfelter?
No, Ken's still alive.
Sorry. Ken is still alive. I'm sorry. His cousin, John.
Yeah.
You're thinking in the right direction. All right.
Zora? Was it
Zora?
All right.
So he was 86 years old. So the father of the Corvette died today in 1996. Okay. So we can't not talk about Tesla's earnings. John, I know that you are all over this. Tell us what, tell us about the $3.3 billion in net income, the 81% gain in revenue to 18.8 billion, the tremendous growth. What went on there?
It's a money machine. I mean, I've been a big critic of Tesla. Excoriating them over the years because they couldn't make any money. Well, they finally are making money, and man, they're making up for lost time. That company is off to the races. And remember, that's with 2 assembly plants. They've only just opened Berlin and Austin, and it's going to take them a year to get it cranked up to line speed. But you watch, we just saw first quarter earnings, second, third, fourth. They're going to be spectacular. Each one should be that much better than the next one because they're going to be ramping up volume so fast.
So, Gary, how much of a big chunk of that was regulatory credits, though, right? Like basically selling EV credits. Was that?
Well, I thought a lot of it was just the increase in the number of vehicles sold.
Yeah, no, Mike, you're right. They did book, as they have been booking from the very beginning, selling ZEV credits, but I stopped criticizing the company when it started making a profit, even if you don't count those credits.
Right.
Well, and that's where they're at right now.
I think too, if you take the credits away, they're still making good profits. So you could
big
you used
profit.
to be able to say, well, when the credits go away, what are they going to do? And now it seems that they're going to keep making money on cars.
Look, they don't need the credit money anymore. I mean, they'll happily take it. And in fact, I think we'll see from this point on their credit money nosediving as traditional automakers who were buying those credits come out with their own plug-in hybrids or even their own EVs and no longer need to purchase ZEV credits to qualify. So I think that'll all disappear in the next couple of years for Tesla. It doesn't matter anymore. They're just so profitable, and they're just going to get even more profitable.
One of the details that I found interesting in their report was the fact that they have 3,724 supercharger stations, which accounts for 33,657 connectors. I mean, that makes all the difference. I mean, that's sort of like what Apple did when they started the iTunes store. I mean, this began to make sense for people to use conveniently. I think that is something that the other OEMs are going to have a very, very difficult time catching up with.
Look, they're never going to catch up. The only thing that they can do is put a Tesla charger adapter in their EVs because, Tesla keeps talking more and more publicly now about how they're going to open up their charging network to non-Tesla cars. And it'll probably happen in China and Europe faster than it happens here. At least that's what Elon's saying. But they're going to do it here as well. And that charging network, which is by and large a cost for them right now. I mean, people do pay. You remember when it started, it was all for free. That went out the window. But man, if Tesla opens up its charging network to anybody who wants to charge their car, they can make a lot of money on that charging network.
Well, I think too that's like it's preserved their lead, right? That there's cars that compete with the Model 3 on price and range and features and drivability, but the thing you're seeing now in all of the reviews and on social media is the charging networks aren't quite as reliable. And Tesla, by owning it, the whole network, they have an incentive to keep it up. Whereas depending on the charging network, it falls to, whoever's business the charger is at, or maybe they're just not very good at it. And again, the automakers maybe didn't realize some of the things that Tesla has done well and adapt to it quickly enough. And the charging network is one of them. It's, we're definitely 6 months, maybe 1 to 2 years before you can buy a car from any other OEM and say, this is going to be as reliable, just in terms of uptime. The flip side of it is Teslas are, because they charge so well, because people make it, sometimes you wait, but the odds of, rolling into a charging station with 10 miles of range and finding out 3 of the 4 chargers are broken is not really what happens with Tesla. And it's far more likely with the other networks.
All right.
So another thing that I thought was interesting this week is Toyota announced that it is going to be spending $383 million among 4 manufacturing plants in the United States to produce 4-cylinder internal combustion engines. Now, they did point out that these engines can be used for hybrid applications. Now, that is on top of an announcement that they made it last November, which was followed up by another announcement in February, which accounts for $313 million invested to make hybrid transaxles. These guys are not giving up on hybrids. And I wonder whether they might not be the ones who are making the right bet in terms of, the full producers versus a Tesla or a NIO or a Lucid. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I mean, I personally think that plug-in hybrids don't get enough credit. That, for right now, it's a much better solution for huge parts of the country and a lot of people's driving styles. You have the added cost and complexity of essentially putting 2 drivelines in a car, but as of now, it's still cheaper than than a giant battery pack. So there's some cost advantage there too. And so like I said, I don't understand why they're not more popular or they're not more widespread. I think a lot of it has to do with consumers. Like, people just never really understood that you plug it in and you can also go to the gas station. But I like it from a philosophical standpoint. I'm with you though, Gary, is like, okay, they're making the bet nobody else is making. That could pay off big, but it could be, not to be harsh, but Nissan made a big fuss about investing money into sedans, and a year later, I don't know if that's paid off.
Yeah.
So we'll see with Toyota. But like I said, from a philosophical standpoint, I think there's still a lot of use cases where hybrids and plug-in hybrids are still the best choice.
Yeah, I'm not very big on plug-in hybrids. They don't sell well. In fact, in China, they're going to eliminate free license plates for plug-in hybrids. And, I looked it up. A license plate in Shanghai costs $15,000. So, losing that kind of a subsidy, you're going to see plug-in hybrid sales crater in China very, very quickly this year. But Toyota's pretty smart. I mean, it does very well with hybrids. I want to say 1 out of 4 hybrids sold, or 1 out of 4 Toyotas sold in the United States is a hybrid. So they've done far better than anybody else with them. And, as so much of the public is still very skeptical about electric cars, if gasoline prices stay high, more and more of them will turn to hybrids instead. So Toyota's got a very smart strategy, very solid strategy. The danger in that strategy is that sales of electric cars are really starting to take off. I mean, you look at the growth of them, it's the fastest growing part of the market right now. And Toyota really does not have a competitive product in there. It's coming out with the BZ4X, but that's really a compliance car. I don't even think they're selling it in all 50 states. And so Toyota runs the risk of missing this fast-growing segment with people pouring into it. It might show up a little too late with a competitive product.
But I wonder about it from the point of view of, okay, so by and large, the OEMs who've announced that they're going to be, we're going to go all electric. Okay, but they all say in 2030, 50% of our sales will be electric vehicles. That still leaves 50% that'll have internal combustion engines. Now, Toyota is investing in modern internal combustion engines while you hear nothing from these other guys except for, oh yeah, we just invested in this battery plant. I mean, so, come 2030, when people are still buying cars, they're going to be making a choice. And, Toyota might be saying, hey, we'll take it, because we have a better offering.
Well, look, remember, if you look at a company like General Motors, to use it as an example, when it said we're going to be all electric by 2035, they said it's our goal to be there. And when Ford talks about 40% or 50% of our car sales by 2030 are going to be electric, so much of those public pronouncements are for Wall Street consumption. Wall Street doesn't want to hear about ICE strategies. They want to hear about electric strategies. And if you talk electric strategies, you're rewarded on Wall Street. People want to buy your stock. Make no mistake about it. Companies like GM and Ford and Stellantis, in fact, Stellantis just came out with a Hurricane engine, all new. There's no question that traditional automakers like Ford and General Motors are investing in their ICE products. They're just not talking about it.
Mike, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to say, that's also like probably the hardest part as a legacy automaker is how much money do you pour into switching over to something like full battery versus, supporting your legacy equipment, for lack of a better term, that's still going to be around for, like John said, at least 10 years and maybe longer. Because, a lot of times they say electrified and they mean any piece of electrical in the drivetrain. It's a really nice asterisk where they say it just means we're not going to, anything gas powered is also going to be hybrid. But I don't, it's a real tricky line to walk between, we don't want to fall behind in battery, but there's a lot of money coming in the door with gas power too.
Right.
Yeah, I think the companies that are in trouble potentially, Gary, and you and I were talking about that earlier this week. Jaguar says it's going all electric by 2025. I don't see the market being there by 2025, not for the Jaguar brand. Who else? Volvo has said it's going to go all electric by 2030 or by 2025. Big, risky move on its part as well.
Well, what was interesting, I mean, in the context of, going all electric or making, big commitments to going electric. So RJ Scaringe, who runs Rivian, said last week, quote, 90 to 95% of the supply chain does not exist. And he was talking about the supply chain for batteries. Okay. So, what's going to happen there? I mean, so here's a guy who's sitting on 100,000 orders to make trucks for Amazon, and he's saying 80 to 90% of the supply chain doesn't exist. How's that going to work out for the people who are making all of these big bets on batteries? Silence.
Look, if he's got this big order from Amazon and he's saying the supply chain's not there, sell your Rivian stock. I mean, that doesn't sound good at all. Now, I got to believe RJ does know where he's going to get all the materials for it. And, he's just probably talking about maybe a supply chain is not as widespread and as robust as he wants. But my bet is somehow or other, he's going to find those batteries. But to your point, Gary, this is why you see so many automakers, traditional automakers, bringing this stuff in-house and dealing with raw material suppliers directly. I mean, which automakers never did in the past.
And yeah, I mean, I think it shows that the EV landscape isn't fully matured yet, right? Like it's up to mainstream now, but it hasn't matured because we don't know things like what's, what are we going to do with battery chemistry, or how do you deal with a huge increase in lithium prices, or, and how do you compensate for that? And I don't think, and one thing I haven't seen is, the automakers saying, we have a plan for a bunch of different chemistries. There's always like something's off on the horizon down the line, but nobody's really, I'm not sure what people are going to do with the short-term disruption.
Well,
much like a cat howling.
Sounds like your cat came in the room. I love it.
The problem is that is that this may not be a short-term problem, though. I mean, because if you know you look at the metals that are going into batteries, you know, the availability in the United States is not that great. I mean, there are big issues, and so as we get all of these gigafactories coming up, you know, they're all looking for this stuff. And so for this year, I mean, battery prices have actually, you know, over the years, battery prices have been going down, right? I mean, per kilowatt hour, it's getting closer and closer to that magic $100 mark, which I know, John, you've criticized as not being particularly accurate, but let's just use that for sake of argument. Okay. But now this year, they're actually going to be going up because of the increase in the price of, as you say, Mike, lithium. And, you know, I'm not sure that this is going to be able to be resolved in any time for people to begin to sell vehicles that are not at a very high price point, you know, vehicles that would be, you know, more in the $30,000 range.
Well, and when you look at existing chemistries and existing, you know, and density, you know, if you have a 110 or 150 kilowatt hour pack, and you go to a little bit less density, you're talking a jump from 350 miles to 300. But when you get down in the more affordable range, like you're saying, you're either taking on a significant weight penalty or a significant range penalty when you change that composition. So a lot of unanswered questions for me. I don't think it's going to stop the automakers because they're making big investments, and you know that's where the market's going. That's where the pressure is from the China market. But I'm not quite sure how anyone's going to solve it yet.
Well, I see you had tweeted out an item about the Ford Lightning, and I thought it was interesting when you're talking about, you know, when you're going to 80% and what your range would actually be.
Yeah, so I was looking at, I think it's a 260 mile range or 230 miles on the standard battery pack, which is, 200 miles I think is probably a good minimum for people to adopt EVs. Although psychologically there's evidence that American buyers want more like 350 or 400. But, you know, that's 230 miles in good conditions from a full charge. And one of the things that, a traditional gasoline car buying owner might not realize is when you're out and about driving your EV, again, it depends on chemistry. It depends on the car. Some people just recommend keeping it like 80% as full for battery preservation. But when you're out and about and driving and you go to a fast charger, you're really only fast charging up to 80% because that last 20% slows down a lot. So if you have an F-150 Lightning and you want to go on a road trip, that first tank is 230 miles of range, that charge is 230 miles of range minus whatever, how close you want to cut it before you get to the charger. The second charger is you're only going up to 80%. So again, like I said in the tweet, odds are you're running from about 20 to 80% in everyday driving, which turns your 260 mile truck down to 170. And then I think you might, we run the risk as we're rapidly moving into EV adoption and, interest has gone up and the rates of the sales rates have gone up. We're still, we're at mainstream, but we're not at mature. And we're still at a point where I think there's a risk of some backlash from consumers not totally understanding some of the things that go along with EV ownership.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a question that has to do with EVs and the world of Hemmings. Okay. So it occurs to me. So how would someone know, let's say 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there's a Bolt EV, okay, that somebody has it's just beautiful. It's just sweet. How will they know about the state of the battery?
So for the Nissan Leaf, there's actually a third-party piece of software called Leaf Spy, and you hook it up to your OBD2 connector, and it tells you a very detailed report on the state of the battery, including cycles, and I think it even gets down to what individual packs are in terms of their health. So my presumption is that's going to be a regular part of the report is of the used car buying process is, okay, I know how many miles are on it. I might know some sort of overall top line battery life indicator, but show me the show me the insides from a data perspective.
Hmm.
I don't know if that exists for the Bolt yet. And then you're wading into some right to repair law pieces, especially when you talk about Tesla. But I think the future will be, like a battery equivalent of a compression test.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's going to do it, but if you're careful or you really care about it,
right,
there will be something for that.
I love that analogy to a compression test. That's really good. Well, hey, do you have anything else, Gary? Or
we should leave it there.
Okay.
I got some more weeds that we could get into.
Yeah. Right. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great having you on, especially with Mazen from Singer. And Gary,
thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
We'll do it again next week.
Okay, so take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.